Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. It's been an epic time for me. Today's Saturday, April 5th. Just finished the last sitting for the 7 day gathering, and I've been really happy about that. Really great outcome. I got a little voiceover due about that. But this video is specifically about how all these people are coming to terms with, it being over, right? Like they're just getting where I've been for a number of years, and other people, that the system's not savable. I mean, they don't know that, like they're not conscious of it, but they're becoming aware that that's of a thing, like some abstract thing looming, like a monster, or like the idea of a monster, and unknown. Like when you're watching a monster movie and they don't show the monster right away, right? They don't give you a full view of the werewolf or the Loch Ness monster or whatever it is, right? They sort of like you see things happening. Jaws, you don't see it right away. Like there's a big reveal that's going to come where they show it to you midway through the movie or whatever. The Leviathan, right? Something, looming there, and they kind of everyone's getting this sense of it. Not trying. Everyone's like aware of it. Like there's something creeping into their minds that it's over because I got Kamala Harris. Well, first of all, I got a couple things I just got from my TV, and then there's some videos where these panels of five, or these people that are there, are just arguing. They're losing their minds. They don't know what to do about all the stuff that's happening. The terrorist stuff, Trump is so oblivious. And Kamala Harris and Obama are denouncing Trump. But Kamala Harris, everyone knows that she was picked as a patsy, right? Which we'll get into that. And Trump is a patsy, right? So these are people who thought they might get the hero narrative, but they're really patsies, right? They thought they might get the hero narrative. Like this, when they do reality TV shows, they have these different archetypes. And each, they have to cast these, they have to fill these roles in the reality TV. And, there's always a hero and a villain. Those are the two main ones, a protagonist and antagonist. And they can edit the way they can edit the footage they have any way. There's a great video out there. It's probably maybe 10 years old now, but it shows how they did a fake reality TV show, and they got all these clips from these people, and they showed you how they could edit it where the one person's the hero, or and that same person's a villain in another edit, right? And they went through all these different people filling these roles, and oftentimes they're not these everything that's happening is taken completely out of context. And so these people thought they might be, like, maybe Kamala Harris didn't know that she was a patsy. Donald Trump certainly doesn't know he's a patsy, right? They thought they were going to be the hero. They're patsies. There's no heroes here. That's what I've been saying. There's no one going to save you. The system shouldn't be saved, and it can't be saved. Two things. Two specifically different things. The system can't be saved, which is, that could happen to any system, a good system. But it's a bad system on top of it, and it shouldn't be saved, right? And those are, it goes against the divine will. So there are systems that align themselves with the divine will, and it's just time. Everybody dies, everything has to end, and you begin again to something else, right? Like life is transformation and change, and things come to an end, and other things begin. It happens in your own life. You think about, you have phases in your own life, the end of your childhood, right? The end of being a baby. You start walking and talking and feeding yourself. Then you're a toddler, so you're no longer a baby. And then you're a little kid, you're no longer a toddler, right? You start going to school, you start having your own life, and then you're an adolescent. You're no longer a kid, you're an adolescent. And then these other things that happen in your life, you have these big moments in your life where things change, right? You're living a life, you're having a family, and whatever, it's just divorce, right? Boom, big changes. Your life before the divorce and after divorce. The life before somebody close to you dies, and the life after. These things, the life before you get a job, some big career, and the life after the career, right? You have these distinct moments, these watershed moments, these transformative moments in your life that something ends and something else begins. These things are just all part of life. You're not just your aging, but anything, retiring, any number of things that happen. You have these watershed events. You're like, everything was different after that event happened. And then there's a collective events, right? 9/11, like everything changed after that. COVID, everything changes after that. There's these things that happen that are so epic, that they affect everybody. And there's the pre 9/11, post 9/11. There's pre COVID and post COVID, these moments, right? And there's more moments coming, much bigger collective moments coming. And where people are like, oh, yeah, that was when shit went south. So, anyways, let's just go through this. These clips speak for themselves. These Democrats and Republicans, because the Democrats, they can complain about Trump, but, they know very well that they failed. Like, their failure set the pave way for Trump as a launching pad for Trump. Cory Booker even admitted to that in his epic 25-hour, non-epic 25-hour goofy political theater speech, right? But he admitted to it. Like, the Democrats know that they've lost, and there's no, they don't have anything, right? They made everything about Trump for the past 10 years. I mean, like, that's not a winning strategy. And they set Trump up to fail and fail America. And they can come in and try to say whatever, but it's too late. Like this, it was too late when it was too late when, I mean, years and years ago. America's been going downhill for a long time. Like, we just haven't hit the bottom yet, so we don't know. We're in free fall, and the world along with it. So there's things that are, happening that are beyond the control of anybody. Things that people can't control. And this is one of them, the collapse of the world civilization as we know it, and giving birth to something better. And so I've been aware of this for years. Like I said, being right or being ahead of the game really means almost nothing to me at this point, other than having, a head start on preparation. But having a head start isn't great when, all these people run around like, I mean, if you have prepared and everyone else isn't, they're going to come running at you one way or another, right? That's part of the problem. I wish everybody was preparing, right? Even Mark Cuban, because of the terrorists. I have a tweet, and it might be actually a video. I'm going to see if I find a video clip. But he was saying that people should start hoarding or start prepping or whatever, right? So, I mean, they're coming to terms with the fact that it's over, and they just don't, know what to do about it. Like, it's just there, and even your most sheepish friends, it's like something creeping into their minds, like it's fucking. We might not survive this. Like, it's beginning to be like a thing where they're realizing we're fucked, and so even the Trumpers are starting to realize Trump's a piece of shit, and like, they might not admit it to themselves or anybody else, but they can see it. It's fucking obvious at this point that he's fucked them, and he's not what he promised. And so Democrats are like losing it. It's just great. Let's get into it here. So I just completed Greetings, brothers and sisters. This will be a standalone audio for the Gratefulness meditation, and this will be the afterthoughts, at least one of the audios. I'll probably do a second one tomorrow when I've done the whole sittings myself. And so there'll be 2 audios here to go in that playlist, and then also this will go in the Journey series, and I'll put it in my next video, my next regular video. So just completed the 7-day sittings, and it was by far the best experience and the best service that's offered, free service that's offered on the Gratefulness meditation channel. These 7 individual deep cleaning sittings to help encourage sensitivity and better experiences in the system. In the Sajmark system, there are sittings and there are gatherings where you just don't want it to end. You're going on a break from your material life and diving into your spiritual world. And it's not something that you can really grab hold of like you would possess something, like in the way that we possess something. It's just an experience that's there. And it's going to end. You're going to have to go back to your life. You're going to have to go back to your, whatever it might be. But you just want it to last forever. Like, you want to just retain the experience you're having for, like, just ever. Like, you just don't want to leave. It's the condition. It's just the way you feel inside. Feel connected to God, and just this, like, just no worries or thoughts about your life or anything that's going on, or just everything seems trivial. Like, if you did think about something, it just cease to matter. And you just want to sit there and just, like, like you're floating in a sea of bliss, like some kind of, I don't know how to describe it. And you're just really happy. Like these moments that you have where you're just really happy, and these are material moments, but you're connected to your significant other or your family, and you just have these really great moments where everybody's just feeling it, feeling the love and the energy, and just everyone's happy and just whatever. But it's something that's deeper than that. And the seventh sitting in this was just like that, where the work is being done completely on a spiritual level, where that's without any sort of visual references or things. As a preceptor doing this kind of work, there's just certain sittings that you just want to last forever. And then, I'll be experiencing the sittings as a practitioner in 2 days. I'm 2 days behind the thing. But I'm just really glad that this thing had happened, this 7 day sittings. This is as close to a gathering as you'll get. I mean, it's been raining here, and there's been, we had this torrential rain this last night. I couldn't even bring the dogs outside. I usually bring them outside to go to the bathroom before bed, but like it was just raining from around 9 o'clock till 1 or 2. I mean, all through the night. It's the whole pasture, everything that's outside is flooded. We had a couple of days ago. We had hurricanes. Tornadoes that like touched down around the area that didn't do any damage, but there was just the prevalence of tornado warnings. I know a lot of people here were in their basements. I didn't, and just and it poured so much then, but everything was flooded. So just a lot of rain and a lot of just whatever it is. Years ago, when I took my first sittings, it rained like this, and I was in Massachusetts, where it was August, which is not something that usually happens. That kind of rain. It happens here quite a bit in April, but this whole week has rained through the sittings, and it's just been a great experience. Also, an intense experience. The cleaning is really deep cleaning, and then which led to the opening up for having this deep transmission type experience where you have things cleaned out so that there's where you can dive deeper into your spiritual condition, because there's all this stuff that's been weighing you down, and on a spiritual level blocking your connection to God, and this really deep cleaning and this series of sittings, and people can come back to it and do it again, and when they need to. So it's a great thing because it exists. I mean, it doesn't exist on the internet, but you can connect with it through the YouTube channel. Anyways, just want to say those few things. I'll come back to this when I experience the sitting, as taking it as a practitioner when I receive the sitting. Okay, so that's it for now. So let's start here. As of today, a $100 bill now weighs more than $100 worth of gold. So I fact check this. I usually know, sounds about right. Gold prices are really high, but I decided to fact check it anyway. How much does a $100 bill weigh? 1 gram. The high price for gold for 1 gram of gold price today, USDA, was $100. So it passed that. It's now at 97. So it's fluctuating. So sometimes a bit of gold that weighs the same as much as your $100 bill is more than $100 or less, but it's right there. And that tells you how fucked we are. The idea that an ounce of gold was $1, that was, or was it $20? Whenever there was a gold standard, that the ounce of gold was something $100. I don't know what it was, like a whole ounce. And now it's a gram of gold is $100. So that shows you how fucked we are. Okay, so here it is. The gold dollar from 1849 to 1899 was a coin that was 0.167 grams. So 1.7 grams, let's call it, right? And so that was, equivalent to, right, what $100 now. So that was $1. And so I'm not sure what 1.7 divides into. I'll do it in a second. But let me show you this. Double Eagle, 1949 to 1933. This was 1 troy ounce, right? So that was 9.67 troy ounces, so almost an ounce, right? And that was worth $20. So an ounce of gold was worth $20 back in the 1800s. And so what we have is 100% inflation since that time. With all these things, right? The way that gold prices have gone up, and it's being suppressed. Gold should be actually much higher than it is. Like that's how fucked this whole thing is. Um, and so that tells you everything you need to know. Um, what was I going to say? Oh, 1.7. Let me do that real quick here. So that goes in, 1.67 goes into 160 times. And so that's what is that, 6,000%? Each of those 60 times is 100%. So I guess that's 6,000% inflation since that time. So you understand what's happened. And, and Trump's trying to do tariffs to fix it just won't work. Like, it's just, this can't work because the value of the dollar has been so inflated, and the price of the dollar has, in compared to these other currencies, right, and all these things that have happened, it's impossible for U.S. manufacturing, and all the things that I've said. It's never going to be as cheap to manufacture things here as it will be in China. And so anything manufactured here is going to cost a shit ton more than things manufactured in China, which is going to just destroy the American consumer. But Trump's, too stupid and arrogant and thoughtless and just a boob, to understand any of that shit, right? Okay, so Mark Cuban said this. Mark Cuban says consumers to buy lots of consumables now. This is from Yahoo. Stock up now, says Mark Cuban. He warns that even American-made goods will see price hikes. So he has this thing called, I don't know what it is, Blue Sky, something or other. And here is the post here, coming to it sometime in the near future. It's not a bad idea to go to local Walmart or big box realtor and buy lots of consumables now, from toothpaste to soap, anything you can find storage space for. Buy before they have to replenish inventory. Even if it's made in America, they will jack up the price and blame it on tariffs. So Mark Cuban has become a prepper, and he's not conscious of it, but he's suggesting prepper like, behaviors because, he's doing it over the tariffs, but it's going to be beyond that, right? Okay, so the next part of this video is going to be chaotic, and of course the year of the chaos. And I might have some clips that I copied off of the TV that are also part of a YouTube video that was up. I don't know. Like, it's just I have about 10 videos and a bunch of other stuff to get to, some tweets and things. This is probably going to be a little bit of longer video just to prove the point. The Democrats are losing it. Trump just sucks, and so the Trumpers they're going to get that when they get it. They'll figure it out or not, whatever. It doesn't matter. But the Democrats are. Trump is actually going to do what he said he was going to do. Like, Trump is going for it. And they don't know what to do because they kind of know it's their fault. At least people see it as their fault. At least some of them are aware of that. And they don't really have a plan because their plan has been not to be Donald Trump, right? To be the opposite, the choice other than Trump, right? And make everything about Trump. And now Trump is going for it, and he's not listening to anybody. And there's stuff about, Laura Loomer making him fire people, and they're posting all these things like somebody out there can do something about it, right? This is why I talk about the truth community. People get on the internet, and this was the, shill Alex Jones Infowars model, saying that, if I say these things, then someone out there will do something. Like, it's like you're witnessing something. You're being a whistleblower. And you're saying, hey, look at what's going on over here. Somebody do something. And you look around, and nobody knows what the fuck to do, right? Like, that's what's happened right now. Because no one knows what the fuck to do, because there's no contingency plan for this, right? And, it's not about Trump. This is far beyond Trump. It never was about Trump, right? It isn't about you or me or anything. It's about a system. You think about the amount of inflation that we're talking about, right? So that a 1.6 grams of gold used to be worth $1. So like that's just crazy. It's it's 60 times. It's gone up 60 times since the 1800s. It's not that long ago. That's how the amount of inflation, and that's what happens in a debt-based currency. And it could be much worse. They're doing what they can to keep gold prices down, but they have been going up for the last few years. They've reached record highs, and they're going to continue to go up because the reality is that the dollar should be worth almost nothing right now. I mean, that's a sad fact. But if it was worth nothing, the whole economy would collapse. So they have to just fudge the numbers, and they can only do that for so long. And so they have to do other shit like wars and shit like this, distractions, whatever it might be. But that's where we're at. And there's things that are going to happen beyond their control. They can only keep this system limping along for so long. And so everyone's kind of realizing this. I've known about this for years, so it's kind of funny for me to watch everyone realize it. But then, then the reality sets in. But let's get into it. Here are the two clips I copied off the TV. Let's start there.
Free trade has been good for the American people, for hardworking people.
Republicans, most Republicans for their entire career.
I want to keep it on the economy.
They were incorrect on that.
I want to let Ashley Allison have a say and also return the conversation to the economy because we have more to discuss later in the show on the podcast.
I mean, I could watch that all day, so I wasn't going to interrupt.
So we're seeing this more and more on these shows, especially when there's Republicans and Democrats. And they're like, there's no social etiquette and they're just talking over each other. And I have another one of these. I don't know. I think this might be the same one, but it might be something different. Where they just, if it is, I'll cover it in depth. This is just a small clip I found, but it's kind of hilarious because they don't know what the fuck to do. And then this happened this morning. This thing I just showed you is from like 5 days ago. I just haven't had a chance to grab it yet. But there's this here.
Question this morning is America's national security team in the hands of a 31-year-old MAGA flamethrower? And what else is Trump getting advice on, and from whom? This is confounding.
Wait a minute. She only 31?
Well, that's a different conversation.
That woman, Abby Phillips, stays reasonably calm, or even unreasonably calm, for whatever's going on in that fucking shitty show she has there, Table of Five. And so Laura Loomer came in. This is the title: White House fires NSA boss team after visit from conspiracy theorists. And this is where Laura Loomer has been linked to us. And she shouldn't be because she sucks horribly. She's the most pro-Israel person. And you can't be a truther and be pro-Israel. Or at least not be honest about what Israel is, right? You can't be pro-Israel. You just can't. Like, it's just, I mean, the Truther 101 is that Israel is a part of America's, this whole thing. Owning politicians and the whole stuff. Which, everybody knows. It's not to blame Israel, everything on Israel, but, you can't be pro-Israel and be pro the truth because their whole agenda is lies and what's happening in Palestine and all these things. And so Trump fired a bunch of his staff after she came in and told him to do that, right? And she's absolutely abominable, right? She's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that, Trump has the right to hire and fire, however, whenever, whatever. But most of these people, I think this is what kind of gets me about this, there are people in the national security apparatus.
You can hear chicks in the background. My chicks. They're not even in the same room. They're just like going all the time. I'm so used to it, I don't even hear it anymore. Until I did this, I could hear it in the background.
This country, people who served in the military, people who have served in government, loyally to Democratic and Republican presidents, who are not thinking about politics when they are doing their jobs. And they serve regardless of administration. And those people were serving Trump just fine until Laura Loomer decided, they worked under Joe Biden, so they've got to go.
In many cases, there were people who served in Trump's first term.
Yeah.
So this isn't even, nonpartisan civil servants being purged. And let's be careful about, MAGA flamethrower, right? Self-described white nationalist is what you said?
And Islamophobe.
Islamophobe and 9/11 truther, right? So
all of those things.
I lived through 9/11
Yes.
up close, right? So.
Oh, you were there, so you must know what happened, right? Now, she's a 9/11 truther. She's not. Because, Israel played a part in it, right? I mean, there's a lot of evidence that Israel was at least aware of it if not more. And so, this is whatever. You guys know my feelings about it. I published on my other video, my other channel. I went back and recreated my videos, and they got almost no views, so it was like a waste. I mean, 3,000 views is fine, or less though. But it's on my Apocalypse Now channel. But anyways, she's not one of us. Like, she's the opposite of one of us. And so these are when people who are right-wing people pretend to be truthers, but they suck at it, and they make it difficult for the rest of us, and they, whatever. But they're trying to disparage her in this way, which is, for them, this is CNN 101. But the real reason is that she's just fucking nutty as hell, and she's more pro-Israel, and she's a right-wing, nut job. I mean, she's not, truther. And even if she wasn't that, she just shows up and says, Trump, fire people, and he does. And he's got a thing for it. It's a weird thing. So
there was a time not that long ago that alone would have been the end of the conversation. But this person
it should be the end of the conversation today.
Right. This isn't that she's kind of out there.
This is why you got no fucking viewers. You think that people think that the government and the media have some credibility left. That we believe, that people, I mean, even sheep will kind of get a sense that everything's up for grabs. They might not go as far as truthers, but they don't trust the media and the government, and those days are over. And so the official story is no longer something that you can, wield as an instrument to bludgeon people. You're just going to lose all your viewership. No one's going to watch you. Just old people who still live in a time in their minds where the government and the media actually had some integrity and some qualities that, would tell you at least partially the truth. Or the full truth for them, right? They would tune on the news to get, from Walter Cronkite and these other fuckers, like they would go and get their news from them. But, that's, people don't do that anymore. That's over. Like that's, we tune in to watch these shows to mock them, right? Because they're so bad. And that's why they're like, if she's out there, well, she's out there, but not for the reasons you say so. Not because of the 9/11.
But this person is actually marching the White House, speaking to the president directly, and then he's acting on it by firing national security staff. That should make nobody feel good.
Well, you're leaving out a step.
What's the steps now?
Which is my understanding is that she did go to meet with him and presented him with rather basic vetting information about some of the staff and things they had said, maybe political contributions they had made, as evidence that perhaps they were not supportive of his agenda when it comes to national security. It is the president's right to have the staff that's
the reason I brought this up.
This idea to demonize people for being conspiracy theorists, like they're just words. Like everything's just words, but this has no, it doesn't move the needle anymore, right? Calling somebody a blogger. I mean, they can't wait to quote Joe Rogan when he goes after Trump, right? So, it comes down to views and influence, and they have done. Like the mainstream media has almost no influence. And so the way this works is I watch, I eat breakfast and lunch, and I turn on either sports coverage or news coverage. It doesn't take me very long to eat. And then I find these clips. And so, there's nothing better than a clip where you find somebody like Ana Navarro who goes off and gets all emotional. And then there was another clip that she punks herself. And I knew that there was this clip of her talking about Joe Biden not being senile, as bad as the debate was an anomaly. And it was really bad. And it totally punks herself from what she just said. And I thought I had it up as a YouTube video, but it was the clip that I had copied. Sometimes I have the news on pause, or the news is playing, on the TV or whatever. And, I come in and start watching at a certain point, but it copies from the very beginning of the show. And so 3 or 4 days ago when I was engaged in all the bathtub, spiritual gathering stuff, all these things that I'm doing, I, recorded the episode that you just saw. And the reason I recorded it was the second quote, the one I'm just going to show you, right? Which is great because Ana Navarro completely punks herself on Joe Biden. When she said all these things about Trump and Republicans just wanting to be around somebody who's, They don't care if they'll violate everything they believe in. So her point was Marco Rubio, that she's known since a little boy, grew up together, they're pals, has been against tariffs his whole life, and now he's for them just so he can be around Donald Trump. But that's politics. And, her guy, Joe Biden, she's trying to defend this guy. And then we're going to get into Kamala Harris because there's a book out. This is about a book that's out. And, Kamala Harris is, was never considered a legitimate candidate. So let's segue into that here.
It was taken out of context. I'll tell you my experience, which is what I can talk about. I've known Joe Biden for over 25 years.
Okay, so that sound you heard, we give these dental chews. I give these dental chews to the dogs for their teeth. And that was Tulsi dropping hers. So I'll go back. We'll play that again. Anna Navarro saying she's known Joe Biden for 20 years. What do you mean you know Joe Biden? You know Joe Biden? Like, she doesn't know him as well as I do, right? Joe Biden mercilessly groped all these women and kids when he was vice president in a social setting where he has all the power, because it's supposed to be a family day of celebration as these people, their parents, grandparents, are being sworn in. It's a huge day for these families. They're coming from all over America, and they might have money or whatever it is, or whatever scumbaggery that they're involved in, but their kids and grandkids, they're going to Washington, D.C. to see their parents or grandparents be sworn in to Senate. It's a big deal to go to D.C. I'm not patriotic, but whenever I go there, it's, this place, it's got all this historical stuff there, the Mall of America. I mean, it's, significant. And these kids are getting groped, and their parents can either pitch a fit and ruin the day. It's a very socially awkward situation. Joe Biden is sniffing their kids and kissing them, and there's a thing called frottage, where this kind of, person will rub up against people in a subway or something creepy, right? And be having sexual fantasies and a sexual reaction. And, they have that energy. So Joe Biden's an actual creep. And, this thing where she says, I know him, there's people in your life that you thought you knew them, right? How many times have somebody said, I thought I knew you? And they do something despicable. Your parents, you find out they had an affair, or they did something else, they lied to you about something. I mean, there's times in your life where you think you know somebody and you spend a lot of time with them, but you don't know what's going on inside their internal world, what their thoughts are, what their things that they're not telling you. And I mean, you can read them and kind of sense these things, but you don't know for sure. And even when somebody tells you something, they might think it and believe it, but it's not the truth, right? And people are complex. And so when these people come on these shows, I know Joe Biden. Yeah, you do, right? How many times you met him? 10 times in your life, 20 times? Just like you know Marco Rubio, right? You're stupid. You're oblivious to things. So you know anything. You hate Trump. You love Joe Biden. They're the same fucking guy. They're just different parties.
It was taken out of context. I'll tell you my experience, which is what I can talk about. I've known Joe Biden for over 25 years. Certainly, the Joe Biden today is not the Joe Biden of 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago. It's not. But also, I will tell you, and I think that comes out also in the book and the excerpt that I read, something clearly happened that day, around those days, that was not the case the day after. I saw Joe Biden 24 hours after that debate here in New York. He was a completely different person.
So it sounds like she's a conspiracy theorist, right? He was just different that day. I don't know what happened. I don't know. Something happens and went on. There's some kind of sabotage. And so in the book, they said he was supposed to be preparing for the debate, and he went to take a long nap. And there's another guy talking about this book. We'll get into the book in a moment when we get to Kamala, because there's shit about hers there as well. But they talk about how the judge, looked at Joe Biden and his documents, and he didn't know what was going on with the documents in his house. He felt bad for the guy. He's just like, he's old and senile. But then they're going to get into this whole thing about, well, yeah, but he was still president, right? But Ann Navarro was saying that there wasn't signs of dementia. I always point to this great report where this guy who's a doctor that specializes in Parkinson's says it's very clear he has Parkinson's. And that was clear in 2019. Probably in 2016, that's why Obama backed Hillary Clinton, because he knew Joe Biden was slipping, right? Joe Biden was the logical choice over Hillary Clinton, who already showed that she was unelectable. But he backed Hillary, and Joe Biden was pissed at him because Joe Biden had been going senile for a while. Joe Biden his cognitive abilities have been melting for a long time. And for her to say it's not the same guy is the debate is silly. The guy should not have run at all, right?
I saw Joe Biden when he came to The View after he dropped out, and he was a completely different person than what we saw at that debate. What happened around those days, I don't know. And can I tell you something? I don't care, because I want to talk about the future and how we fight Donald Trump and how we get rid of.
See, what you said here makes my whole point of what I'm saying in this video. Because she's not willing to deal with the fact this other guy's going to come in, the guy sitting next to her that she had the argument with, and talk about how you had a senile guy with mental illnesses who was with deteriorating mental cognitive issues, and he was running the country, which is completely fucked, right? That tells you everything you need to know about America and the Democratic Party. And his, whatever they did with that, his presidency, pissed the American people off so much that you had Trump, who is now full out wrecking the country, and obliviously so. You had two old, oblivious white guys. The whole thing about Joe Biden was this. At the time Joe Biden was elected, the Me Too thing was going on, right? And so there was also all this hate for white men in general. Remember toxic masculinity? That was a big thing. And young people wanted something different, and people wanted an outsider. They were tired of the same old political bullshit. And young people were unenthusiastic about the Democratic Party. And so the Democratic Party is supposed to be the party for youth and, college kids and all this stuff, right? And they nominated an old white guy. It's also supposed to be the party of diversity. And they nominated an old white guy, classic old white guy, very similar to Donald Trump, in fact, a little bit older than Donald Trump. And they expected to win people of color and to win youth. And, he was neither of those things. He had this fucking campaign called the Old Malarkey Campaign. My mom and dad lived into their 90s. They would be like 110, 120. And my mom was Irish, and she didn't use the word malarkey. My grandparents would have. And my grandparents would be like 150 now, right? I mean, he was old for he was like already past generation. Malarkey, like this kind of 1920s, back in the 20s when people were completely different. The generations are so much different than each other, especially now where, technology is changing kids on a rapid level. But you go back, 1920s, 100 years or so, people were so much different then. And Joe Biden was embracing those times. It was crazy. And so they ran a guy with obvious dementia who was a lifelong politician who had been caught snoozling, groping, and doing all the things the Me Too movement. And they forced him on the American people because they knew that they could run their agenda through him, and he would give them no resistance because he was brain dead. Like, they would just tell him what to do. Remember how he always goes, "Oh, I'm going to be in trouble." Like, he would say that all the time because they were always telling him this and that. And they just made him feel like president, like they were playing a game, like with a little kid and pretending the kid was president, right? And there's consequences to shit like that, which is Trump's second term, right? You guys are fully responsible for Trump's second term. And they know I want to fix Donald Trump and fight against him. Well, you should have done that 4 years ago when you had a chance to run a real candidate against Trump and somebody that could have, done a better job. Of course, America's fucked anyway. But, at least they could admit that they failed. Your failure with Biden led to this, this debacle with Trump.
He was not a completely different person. He did the Stephanopoulos debate interview to try to save him. He did your show to try to save him. He's the guy who's in his mid-80s. I'm not faulting him. He just wasn't the Joe Biden who was elected 4 years before.
He wasn't the one.
And his family should have pulled the plug.
I said that.
Well, they should have, and so should his advisors. I mean, talk about a big cover-up.
So this guy's going to say something really obvious, right?
Mental acuity was in question, and some days he's on and some days he's off. Was the guy really capable of doing the job day to day? I honestly really question that.
Oh, you really question that? Way to go out on a fucking limb, right? You really question whether Biden had... We all know it now. Everybody fucking knows this. Because over 70% of the people last January, 2 Januaries ago, January 2023 or 24, said Joe Biden is unfit mentally. 70% of Americans said it. And 30%, who the fuck knows what's going on with them. And some of that stuff, by the summer, it should have been it was probably like 80 or 90%. But the Republicans were starting to say they thought he was great in polls because they wanted him to run, right? And so everybody knew he was incapable mentally. We saw it. I mean, I knew it in 2019 when he ran. He was wandering around the stage shitting himself. I mean, he literally turned around and, in sometimes in town halls, but also in some of these debates, and he just walked backwards. Like he just fucking was not even there. He was fucking gone. And, he was not capable of any other job. Remember I said, will you have this guy drive your school kids in a school bus? Will you have this guy fly a plane, right? Would you have this guy do anything? I mean, he wasn't capable of doing any sort of real job, anything that would require safety concerns, because he was gone. Like, he shouldn't be driving his car. He shouldn't have a driver's license. Never mind be fucking president, right?
And I think a lot of Democrats who said at the time, oh, Joe Biden is the fittest guy in the world. He can do backflips. He could jump into the pool, run marathons, do 100 push-ups. When every freaking person who saw Joe Biden said, there's no in hell this guy is physically fit. But they told us, don't believe your lying eyes because we're with him every single day.
So this was the same thing. Not the same show. Like, maybe the same show. I don't know.
Things that we know simply will not happen. He talks about it being great for the economy and it's going to boost growth. It will not.
This is the same show where these two went at it, right? This is a woman who said she could watch it all day.
Look, I've studied this a million which ways upside down, and many of the people in that rose garden know it. The president conveniently forgot about the Payne-Aldrich Act of 1910.
He forgot about it. This guy, he painfully forgot about it.
Ignored the Fort Macomber Act.
Oh, Fort Macomber
Of 1910. He went straight.
Look at him go. He's going for it.
Through Smoke falling. And then he gets to this nirvana where billions of dollars are going to come in. Where does he think these billions are coming from? They're coming from importers. Importers will pay because they get something known as a customs schedule when the goods come off the boat. And that is an invoice, and the importer pays. And the importer passes it to the wholesaler. The wholesaler passes it to the distributor. The distributor, get your wallet out, passes it to you.
All right. So
Boom. He broke it down.
Very important, okay? Folks at home, classes in session, remember what he just said there, because here is what Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, just told Caitlin Collins in the last hour. Listen.
Everybody sit back, take a deep breath. Don't immediately retaliate. Let's see where this goes, because if you retaliate, that's how we get escalation.
So out of the goodness of their hearts, they are supposed to not retaliate. Calm down. Don't panic. Because maybe this might go away if Trump just wakes up one morning and decides to change it back.
Look, I think the president is right in his critique that free trade has ravaged towns and cities across this country. I even saw you acknowledge earlier,
yes,
Richard, I think with Aaron Burnett, that some countries have indeed taken advantage of the United States. And we can debate the merits of the appropriate approach to address that. I mean, there are towns across this country now that were once thriving. They're now consumed by drugs, crime, the stench of hopelessness.
You think it's because of fucking tariffs? Like, this isn't about any of that shit, right? I mean, this is about the American dream being bullshit. And this goes back to my original premise behind this channel. So one of my original premises, when you go back to my early videos that are no longer public, because my family's just, my family's basically gone from my life. Things are so fucked up. But when I started this channel in 2007, and so almost 20 years ago, it was to document my family's and my being, transitioning from being suburban people and urban people to living on a farm and homesteading. And my kids were milking cows, and we were building earth ovens and building, barns and putting down fence and, growing food and, all these things, right? And I, it was new experience. It's kind of like the stuff I just showed you with the the chicks and the whatever, inventing things, problem solving. And then once in a while I would talk about my spiritual stuff. And then occasionally I made a video about politics or some of these other things, right? So 2007. And, what I learned from homesteading, making that transition, not growing up with it, because there are people who are better at it than I am because they grew up with it. Like there were other channels that, they knew more things because they were taught these things by their parents and grandparents, and they learned them as kids. And my kids, they learned some things, and it was, they're not activating those things. They're not using those things for the most part. I mean, it's affecting them in their life. My kids did great during the flood in Chennai. Some people pointed it out, how they thought my kids were so great during the flood because they were prepared, which was a good thing. But, I mean, other than that, they're not into it, unfortunately. But, these generational knowledge that was passed down and you grow up with it, you're just better off. But so my thing was never about being an expert, but it was about, understanding this transition. And what I realized was that, I had a bad idea of farmers. Like farmers or people who did farm work were considered lower than people who lived in suburbs and these other things. Like that was, indoctrinated into me as it is to everybody else. But being a homesteader and a farmer, you're much more developed as a person because your capacity to work, instead of specializing in one thing, doing a specialized skill, you are multifaceted. And that's why I continue to do these things, because it's just, it's an expression of some part of you. And every person's a farmer, and every person's a hunter-gatherer, right? These are generational, instinctual things that are, that you have ancestors that did all these things. And you did these things in a past life. And so there are things that come natural to people, some more than others, but it's there inside of you. If you've had any kind of experience on Earth, you have that in you. And so a specialized skill economy is just something that's an aberration. It doesn't exist for very long, and it makes people weak. And so what happened was, either by force or by choice, our ancestors were lured off the farm. This is something I've been saying for years. This is what I learned. And a deal was made, that a promise was made to them, that if they gave up all these skills and they gave up their lifestyle and they gave up their village and their community and their neighborhoods and their extended family, they could go into the city and work just whatever it was back then, 12 hours a day, whatever it might have been, and get paid a wage, and everything else would be done for you. And you wouldn't need those skills ever again. And your children, your grandchildren would never need those skills, because the economy was strong. The economy was going to last forever. And it's fucking bullshit, right? They knew it back then, that it was a Ponzi scheme. And so we've hemorrhaged all these skills. And, this thing that I said, somebody quoted it, that I said about how, we're like zoo animals who are no longer, it's in a, I should look for that comment. We're zoo animals who no longer know how to be what we were designed to be, right? Because, we're like living unnatural lives. And these things that we are supposed to be in a family, humans are in families, fish are in schools, lions are in prides, cows are in herds, and humans are in families. And that's been taken away from us. So we don't live in our natural social habitat. And then the houses and things we live in, none of these things are natural to us. And so, we can make them more natural, but we have to fight for those things, right? And so, that promise was made, and now they're reneging on that promise. And they're saying, well, guess what? You're not, this economy and this system were never indestructible, and now it's going to be destroyed, and you guys are fucked and on your own because you got to figure it out. These things that used to be passed down from one generation to another are gone, and you don't know what the fuck to do now, right? And, everyone's coming to terms with that. That's the point of this particular video. Everybody's aware of this, whether you're willing to go there or not, consciously, because it'll freak you the fuck out. It's just there. It's like a shadow just coming into people's mind, the reality. And it's not a shadow in reality. It's just something good. It's a contingency from God, right? But it's nothing that anybody wants to hear about, because this promise that was made to be specialized and make money doing one thing, and then having everybody else do that other stuff for you because you could pay for it, is done. Like, that part's done.
Places that were really vibrant.
There was once a middle class of a lot of Americans from the Rust Belt to even some communities of color that really saw themselves move up the economic ladder in part because of manufacturing. Now, the question becomes, to the point that you just raised, Richard, what about the consumer? I would personally like to explore perhaps some type of a tax credit or deduction to companies to not pass this on to the consumer. Maybe some type of a rebate similar to what we have for electric vehicles.
Yeah, where's that money going to come from, bro? Where's that money going to come from?
So that car manufacturers have a way not to pass it on to consumers. So I think that there are some comprehensive ways that the administration... Let me finish. There are some comprehensive ways that the administration can do this, I would argue, to some great effect for the American people.
I hear what you're saying. But I mean, I remember my
He's not going to do that. Trump's not fucking doing that. And it would, the thing is that there's no one wants to admit that we're fucked. And when you do that, then you don't try shit like tariffs because you realize it can't be done.
Economics class. And my understanding is that conservative economic principles was that you get the government out of redistributing wealth from companies to consumers.
So
hold on. So your idea is basically you slap a tariff, raise prices, and then you give a discount from the government to companies to not raise those taxes when what you could do is just not raise prices at all.
Here's the thing, Abby, and I think both y'all have a point. For the last 20 years, there's been a major black swan in this situation. That's China.
China's a black swan.
When it comes into the global trading system, it's a very different kind of economy. They subsidize everything. The government runs everything. And so you get something called the China shock, where literally a ton of jobs from the Rust Belt, as you're talking about. I grew up in rural Indiana. That was my whole growing up experience. They leave, counties, communities are hollowed out. More importantly...
Okay, so you're leaving out a specific thing here. Those people in China work like fucking... I mean, there's people in there playing video games by force and have died. They have suicide nets outside the fucking buildings. They go to these buildings, they work for 16 hours and sleep for 8 hours in little cubby holes. And they just go into their job and they don't get to leave. They don't get to be outside and they work these horrific conditions. You see what they did on the Olympics? Remember they had these piston-like things in the Olympics? And they were moving around and, they were pumping up and down and doing all these things. And then all of a sudden they came out and showed there was people in there. Like their willingness to do the mundane and the boring and soul-sucking work for no money, not just in China but these other countries. Americans aren't going to do that shit. They're not going to do that for that pay. They're not going to do the work that needs to be done. That's why there's immigrants that come in here. Americans are entitled, which happens in an empire. And what happens when your people will no longer do the shit jobs? I was talking to my son about this, right? You have to pay your dues in high school and college when you're a young person doing shit jobs. Those jobs need to be filled, and you need money, and this is how you enter into the workforce. How many of us had a shit job? Like I picked tobacco when I was 14. And then I worked at Caldor's, which is a fucking defunct, bankrupt department store for a little bit, I think over Christmas when I was in high school. And I worked at the Pie Plate as a dishwasher. And I think I had another job when I was in high school. And then I was in college. I worked at Walmart. I worked at, Kmart. I worked all these other jobs, right? I worked at Wawa's when I was in college. I was known as Mr. Wawa. I opened a town building where I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning and go down and I had the keys to a whole town building in Connecticut. I'd open up the building and I did janitorial work. And then I, was done by like 8 or 9, in the morning. So I worked 3 or 4 hours straight up in the day. I went to class, played basketball, did these things, went out and partied. But some days I would have like 2 hours of sleep and I go in there like still probably, having alcohol. And I rode my bike at first, to get there. And eventually I had a car and I was riding my bike in the fucking winter in Connecticut. Shit like that you did. I worked at a health club. I drove a truck for Poland Springs. You do these jobs, right? That, nobody fucking, these kids won't do these days. And so you get rid of the immigrants who will do those jobs and your kids won't do them. And then these jobs, these people can't fire anybody to do the work anymore. And so that's the issue. America's soft, right? We're soft in a bad way, not soft of heart. soft of character, right?
This is where it gets really interesting. Critical goods that we need in this country, you can't produce anymore in the system as it was originally envisioned in the post-war era, because the global economy has changed and you have all these players that are playing by different rules now. And one thing I will say, and this is not to say that Donald Trump is doing this strategy of, kicking the Bretton Woods system, out and changing globalization. I don't think he's doing it right. But
there's no doing that. Like, you can't do that because America was given the world reserve currency. And if we didn't have that, our currency would be so devalued if we don't have a petrodollar. And this is why I was talking about Bretton Woods. It was a deal that was made to do all these things. And everyone had a role to play. And if, why would America renegotiate its role when it's stupid when they want to get rid of America? Like, they can't sustain your lifestyle anymore. And so Trump coming in and say, oh, we're getting screwed over. Yeah, just wait till we give you the new deal, buddy. Wait till the people realize the fucking deal we're going to give them now, right? When the World Economic Forum saying you'll own nothing and like it, right? And so, this is, they're not getting it. Like, they know it's there, but they just can't get it. They can't go there.
He is making an important point, which is that it's outdated and it needs to change. And that is a stepping off point for a conversation I would like to see Democrats actually engaging with more proactively myself.
Let me say a couple of things. First, I don't think it's a coincidence that he scheduled Liberation Day, which I call Hypertension Day, because it's going to give us all a heart attack.
Oh, she's so funny. She just speaks the truth.
I don't think it's a coincidence that he scheduled it the day after the Wisconsin race, knowing that he could say
the day after April Fool's Day.
Knowing that he could have, we don't have April Fool's Day anymore, honey. The entire year has been nothing but a joke.
Okay, honey. Okay, honey.
A bad one. But I don't think it's a coincidence it was scheduled after that election so that this is the thing we're talking about, right? Donald Trump is such an...
No one gives a shit about that election. Nobody that fucking is outside of Washington, D.C. We don't give a shit. It's... I mean, you guys think it's a barometer for something. It's just silly.
Expert at distracting us. Also, as I watched that ceremony today, and then I saw so many Republicans who I know have been free traders and anti-tariff people their entire careers, starting with my former Senator Marco Rubio,
Rubio? Look at Marco Rubio. She just sucks so bad. It's just such remedial View stuff. She's on The View.
Have known since we were teenagers. This man has spent his entire life arguing against tariffs, and now he's out there waving the flag. And so it's almost like you're watching, the emperor has no clothes on, play live on your TV, and it's the problem of there being no guardrails.
But could it be possible that some of those Republicans of the past were partially incorrect?
No, it's possible that they've lost their cojones and that they are doing...
They lost their cojones.
Nothing but kowtowing to Donald Trump.
So Anna, let's leave the president out of it for a minute. Is it not?
How? How do you do that? How?
How do you leave the president
Let me
out of
make
it?
my point, please. Is it not possible to agree that the original argument for free trade is indeed flawed?
Sir Michael, they had this same position up to 5 minutes ago.
It's not like there was
all of a sudden an evolution.
But you're not answering my question.
I will answer your question.
The idea of free trade has indeed.
This is what I was talking about, because neither one are going to acknowledge that the whole thing's fucked. The system, this is where it ends up, right? It ends up you give up your suffering. And when Americans live in lives where they become, pampered. Every empire, the civilians become pampered. So this is played out in historic fashion throughout, history. Where you have an empire that gets great wealth and great power, and the people become soft because they no longer have to face the kind of they don't have to fight. They don't have to face the difficulties and struggles that people are supposed to go through, that you would go through on a homesteading and a farm and these things, right? Living a more natural life. And so everything's done for you. This is what happens to wealthy people. And they go crazy. This was one of the brilliant teachings of the third master of the Sejmark system that said pain and suffering bind a person together psychologically. And so the trials you go through and the tribulations and the difficulties you go through help you stay sane. And when you have nothing but pleasure, you think about, my dad retired after bitching about his job as a guidance counselor in every possible way. And he retired and he fell apart. Like he didn't have anything. Because, he was like, I'll play golf. He sucked at golf. But you're not going to play golf every day. You suck at it. You don't like it. You don't like anybody else. He didn't get along with people. And so all he was doing was watching TV full time. He had no purpose. His health fell apart. He fell apart mentally. So he was losing it. Like he just, because these people who retire think that their job is some kind of a burden. And it's keeping them from fucking going nuts. And now they no longer have their kids and the issues. They don't have any real problems. They have money and they just, but they look at TV all day and they my dad was talking TV. He became like racist and shit. Like he was just like bitching at the TV and scaring my mom and my grandmother. Like he was getting angry all the time. He was he was like losing it because, he didn't have a purpose anymore. Like you're supposed to work until the day you die. You're supposed to do something contributing in some way or another. You dying out in the field as a farmer is like a wonderful thing, right? Like you're doing what you're supposed to do, the things that you like to do and things that are good for you. When you take that away from people, which happens in every empire, and it's happened to us, the specialization, and, they lose the will to, and they don't get tested, and they can't do the work, and they can't do the difficult jobs and things that need to be done. And so the empire falls apart. It happens over and over again. That's where now, look at the people, look at the kids. That's what's happening, right? This is the whole...
No, I will tell you. Let me answer your question. There are a bunch of coward, pusillanimous people who want to
Pusillanimous?
stay in power and be around Donald Trump.
I'm arguing something very different. I'm arguing something very different.
No, I'm arguing that they have no backbone and that they know that in order to stay
So you
in a
think
good
free
place,
trade has been good for the American people? For hardworking people?
I think Republicans, most Republicans for their entire career have
want to keep it on the economy.
And I think they were incorrect on that.
That's where it all fell apart. So I caught the tail end of this thing. And it was, up here the whole time. So that's just great. But they just don't get it, right? They don't get it. They know it's there, but they just can't access it, right? Okay, so they missed the point here. The point here is this the best America can produce, right? Speaking of which, so Kamala...
When one person, when a few stand with the courage, that is the courage exhibited by the leaders in this room every day, to stand, to have the courage to say, I feel fear. The courage to say...
Wait, the courage to say you feel fear? What the fuck? I missed her word salad. The thing about Kamala, like this is what happens to losers. Like Hillary Clinton did it. She wrote a book. And this is, I think she's going to say, I told you so. Not here to say, I told you so. That's the name of this video. So she's going to say it. They quote her here. We knew we knew would happen. She was never a serious candidate, which the book says. Like Obama's out also saying, we told you so. And Obama supposedly campaigned for her vehemently. But all these people said that they didn't think she was the legitimate choice. It's out in this book. It's done by a Biden aide. And we know all this stuff because that donor woman came out and said it. And so these people started saying it after the fact that she was misappropriating the money. She was spending it on Washington D insiders and overpaying them, basically taking donated money and overpaying, her friends and allies and getting kickbacks or whatever it was. They were laundering money through through campaign donations. They weren't spending it appropriately, and they weren't running a winning race, and they didn't have a chance to win, and she wasn't democratically elected. She was a patsy, right? Now, she's realizing she's a patsy, maybe now. Trump is a patsy. They both thought they were heroes. They think they got the hero role. They don't tell them until they fuck them over, right? But she's a patsy, and she's coming out and saying, I told you so, would have been better off with me. No, we're not, wouldn't. Like, that's the whole point. Like, there's no choice here but fucking despicable people who are incompetent and who are incapable of telling the American people the truth that we're fucked and you should start preparing for the end, right? But as soon as they say that, it would end that much more quickly. So, they don't really have much of a choice but to continue these silly little lies and feed into the hopium that is dwindling, right? The hopium be dwindling.
Say what is happening is wrong. The courage.
You mean you think it takes courage to say what's happening is wrong? Like, what do you mean? That's your job as Democrats. You're supposed to say that. Almost everybody's saying, even Republicans are bailing on Trump. There was this thing I just heard where they were, well, I can play you that clip in a second after we get through this stuff with Kamala Harris.
Courage to say that there is a way that we must chart to get through this. Understanding our power.
What kind of hand signal is that? What the hell is that? A little fucking... What, you making some kind of shadow animal here? Is that the mouth? Is that a fucking dog? A couple of dogs. This one's humping the other one. Understanding our power.
Understanding our power.
Yeah, that's some liberal bullshit talk there.
In the democracy we still have if we hold on to it.
How are you going to do it? You said that if Trump won, there'd be end of democracy.
Courage is contagious.
No, it's not. Courage is not contagious.
What could have been, everyone? What could have been? That, of course, was former Vice President Kamala Harris.
You're thinking that? What could have been? Are you seriously saying that? There's more coming in. Jen Psaki.
We are seeing organizations stay quiet. We are seeing those who are capitulating.
They're capitulators. Don't capitulate, you capitulators.
To clearly unconstitutional threats.
Threats? Her cadence is horrible. She never developed a good cadence. Like, you have to have a good cadence and rhythm that, you know, sometimes you're like, my cadence might be off-putting to a lot of people, you know, because of whatever. But there's a vibration and energy and a flow to your speech, and she just doesn't have it as a speaker. Like, she has a weird cadence. Like, if she was a quarterback, her team would be offsides all the time because of her inconsistent cadence, right?
And these are the things that we are witnessing each day in these last few months in our country. And it understandably creates a great sense of fear. Because, you know, there were many things that we knew would happen. Many things. I'm not here, so I told you so.
Yeah. You were not the answer. Like, you were not a legitimate candidate. There's no I told you so. Yeah, Trump's failed. You know, Trump could have came out and said the same speech that you had won. The same results. That's what all these people are missing. That it doesn't make a fucking difference. And certainly, you know, I mean, so many decisions, the only thing it can do is expedite the collapse. We're going to collapse. You can either slow it down or you can expedite it, and Trump's expediting it. But so is Biden. And so there's no, look at her, go, look.
Many things. I'm not here, so I told you so.
Woo. Boom.
First of all, she predicted a lot of
they go right to this school.
These things that were going to happen, and many people are definitely scared. We see that out there.
They're definitely scared out there. We're scared. They're pretty scared. All right, let's go to the book thing here. Okay, so the very same network, Senator Booker protests Trump's policies in marathon speech on Capitol Hill. It's before you got the record. Gumby Joe and Mika.
We turn now to a new book on the 2024 presidential election, which is taking readers behind the scenes of one of the most...
What are you looking at, bro? Who are you staring at?
...most consequential races in American history. It's entitled Fight: Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, and features new details about Kamala Harris's conversation with Joe Biden when he told her he was dropping out. Joining us now, the book's
which was a big fuck you to the Democratic Party and people. Like, he knew that she sucked, and she knew, like, he was look, as senile as he was, as much Parkinson's he has, as much cognitive issues, he knew Kamala Harris wasn't going to win, and he was pissed at the Democratic Party, so he fucked them. Remember, that came out. Like, he was sure that she wasn't going to win, so he's like, oh, you're going to get me, well, I'll leave you with fucking Kamala. Like, he detested her, and she knew she had no chance of winning.
Co-author, senior political reporter for NBC News, Jonathan Allen.
Jonathan Allen, there he is.
Senior political correspondent for The Hill, Amy Parnes. Good to have you both with us.
Thank you all so much for being with us. There are so many revelations in this book. One of them is that our own Jonathan Lemire was responsible for Joe Biden getting out of the race after asking Nancy Pelosi that question on Morning Joe. But we'll get to that in a minute. Something that really jumps
Jonathan Lemire playing a role
out here is that Barack Obama didn't think that Joe Biden should continue, and he initially didn't think Kamala Harris should replace him. Jonathan, tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And just to point out, I think everyone there on set features in this book.
So Obama could say, "I told you so," right? Like all these people, fucking. I'm not here to say I told you so.
Jonathan Lemire features prominently. Reverend Sharpton does. Joe, you and Mika do. Except Willie. I'm sorry, Willie. We love you.
Come on.
We love you.
I'll shoot for your next book, 2028. What are you writing about? I'm going to work myself into the story.
That means he's the undisclosed source.
You're lucky.
He's the leaker.
Oh, whoa, they're having such a good time.
It's like you look at
you guys, you're laughing that the results was Kamala Harris got crushed and Trump is destroying the country. What the fuck are you laughing about? And you guys participated in that. You guys are be responsible for that.
Okay, let me look at
was sweet. You just outed me, Jonathan.
Well done, Rev.
I was reading one book one time, I think it was The Commanders. And everybody, Colin Powell wasn't mentioned in the book, and he was the main commander. Colin Powell wrote that book.
There we go.
So, Jonathan, you just told us Willie helped write this book. Go ahead.
Yep. So President Obama absolutely did not think that Joe Biden should continue, according to our sources close to President Obama. And he also didn't want Kamala Harris to be the replacement for Biden. He didn't think that she was the best choice for Democrats. And he worked really behind the scenes for a long time to try to have a mini primary or an open convention or mini primary leading to an open convention. Did not have faith in her ability to win the election. So, and as it turned out, she didn't win, but he was really working against.
Wait, she didn't win?
Against her.
Okay, so this book, it really slams Joe Biden quite a bit. And so they got information from inside people here. Well, that's a little bit more of this, see if it gets better. Here.
In Minnesota, that Virginia was getting really tight, uncomfortably tight, and Democrats were afraid Biden would even lose New Hampshire. These Democratic states were starting to go, sort of.
So they didn't primary. They should have had a primary. They knew way ahead of time. They fucked it. Then they were supposed to be the party of democracy. And I'm not slamming the Democrats as being worse. That's my whole point. Like, there's no fucking solution here. The problem can't be solved. The country can't be fixed. It's totaled, right? There's one option here. It's, drastic changes. I mean, how long America survives as America, that might be another 100, 200 years. I don't know. Like, I have no ability to understand any of those types of things. But America, the way we know it, is done. The America that you know, I mean, it's already changed significantly. The America I grew up with, it totally doesn't exist now. But most of those changes have been considered good. Technological development and, better everything, in terms of your lifestyle. And so that part's done, where now it's going to be depravity and deprivation, right?
But even, we both said to each other, the funny thing is, like, no matter how Biden does in this debate, people are going to blame the debate for the way the polls are already breaking before the debate, right?
Yeah, exactly, Joe. And that's exactly why his advisors felt the need to jump in and kind of switch up the narrative. They knew they were looking at polling. He was looking at polling, and they knew that he was losing. And so they needed to do something, even though there was an advisor, Anita Dunn, who was against it at first. Nancy Pelosi.
Anita Dunn. She needs a Dunn. Anita Dunn.
He went to Biden and said, you don't need to debate him. Why would you sink to Trump's level and debate him? So there were people who didn't want to debate him. And then, of course, they felt the need to. So there he was.
All right. So this is that part. And, it shows you, like, these people they realize that there's the Biden administration fell apart, and Kamala Harris was a joke. She's coming out now giving speeches reminding everybody how bad she was. And then Trump is fucking tanking the economy right now, and then so many other things. And like I said, the idea that Trump might be some genius is over. Like he might be playing 5D chess, that's over. Like it's what morons do. What he's doing here. Let me go to that other clip here. PBS News.
So we've talked a lot about what the White House has to say about these tariffs, the economic impact so far, how the markets are responding. I did ask Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron
Markets are tanking.
Johnson about these tariffs. He has a heavy ag state, of course, a big manufacturing state as well. After markets closed yesterday, here's what he had to say.
This is a bold but risky action the president has taken. I, for one, hope he is correct. I wanted him to succeed. I wanted the American consumers to succeed. I want Wisconsin manufacturers and farmers to succeed.
David, bold but risky.
Holy shit.
Is it worth the risk?
In current Republican talk, that is full retreat. I hope he succeeds with this crazy idea of his.
So this guy, so this is what's up, right? Republicans know, everyone knows these things can't fucking succeed, right? And so let's go to Trump and they'll talk more about this there. So here's Trump.
If you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring.
It's like, when I was a kid, they had this thing called show and tell for when you were in kindergarten, first grade. And you bring something in, you show it to the class, and you tell a story about it, right? I don't know what they do now. Show and tell still exists? I don't know. But it's like show and tell.
Bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%.
34% right there.
In other words, they charge
34.
us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset?
Well, how can anybody be upset? We're charging them less. They charge us 64, we charge them 34.
They will be because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see.
So say they're ripping the shit off. So 39% versus 20. No, none of these numbers can be considered accurate. These people on the other show admitted that Trump is partially right. There are some tariffs here that are legitimate. And, the structure of the economic system. But like I've said so many times, we are 5% of the population using 25% of the resources. A lot of the things that we're getting imported is food and shit that should be going to people in that country. They're being deprived of, right? Because the American dollar is worth more. And so if you're going to renegotiate the deal, you're going to give up something. Like you're not going to get more. You're not going to glom more of the resources. That's silly. Like it's fucking mad. But Trump doesn't give a shit. Trump just got this idea about tariffs as a way to bully people because he likes to bully people. He thought he could bully them into doing his bidding and forcing the American will and American dominance, like all these things, like taking Greenland, like bullying the Danish to take away Greenland, Gaza Strip, right? There's these things. There was somebody left a comment that I forgot one of these things. Oh, going to Mars, right? And so, like, anything where he can claim these territories for America like we did with Alaska.
It's so pathetic. 39%. We're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff. Taiwan, where they make...
So you get the idea here, right? And so, whatever fairness and unfairness is here, it's more complex than just the amount of tariffs that are imposed in America as opposed to these other countries, right?
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. In a few moments.
Okay, so none of those things are true. Like, they don't have a possibility of being true. It isn't like they're like, well, there's some outside chance. This is not going to happen, right? You know, I've said this before. The next president, the next Democratic president, or a Republican president for that matter, is going to repeal all these tariffs. And they're probably not going to last that long. Like, these Republicans are waiting for some, you know, bad news where they can go to the president, really bad news with polling numbers and prices going up and things, legitimate things, and say, you know, this is fucked. And you're destroying your legacy, and, you know, some kind of come to Jesus talk on this thing, because they all know it's going to fail. That's how bad this thing is, right? But Trump is obstinate, and he's isolated, and he's not curious, and he's stubborn. And we don't know how long he's going to make this thing go, because he shouldn't have, like, he should have got the hint already. But he's going through with it, and he's just bullshitting. So the only thing to understand here, does he really believe his own bullshit, or he's just saying that because he has to say something? He knows it's not true, but he's doing it anyway. Either he's been ordered to do it by his handlers, or, you know, Israel, or you know, whoever it is, whoever's telling him to do this thing, or whatever reason he's doing it. Like, he must know by now, on some level, he's fucked.
Moments I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple.
Boom.
It can't get any simpler than that.
See, it isn't whether this is fair or not, because, like I said, the economy is so complex, and America is doing so well. We're doing so much better than these other countries that you can never say that America is being screwed over, which is he is trying to say. And some of the things he said was about Canada's, you know, 200% tariff on dairy, which was it was something he agreed to, a Trump bill, and it never kicks in because the amounts of milk, you know, it's only the tariff only kicks in after a certain amount of dairy products go from the U.S. to Canada, and that they never reach that limit. And so he's being dishonest about all these things. And so, you know, it isn't about whether this is fair or not, or whether this is somehow going to tip the scales back towards America's favor. It's what the results are going to be. And the results are 100% going to be higher prices. Like, it just can't be any other thing, right? Like, the people who are paying the tariffs are the consumers. Means that these people are already stressed out about food prices. The reason why they elected this douche in the first place was because of Biden's inflationary issues and food prices and things going up. And now he's done the same. He's made it even worse. Like, it's so fucked.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history.
This is the day I put the final nail in the coffin of any chance of America rebounding.
It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense.
You mean you're saying they're more powerful than us? You sound like we're the underdog. We've had, you know, California has a bigger economy than most of the fucking rest of the world, right? So, like, he's just so fucked in the head. And so, let's go to this part.
Thank you very much. We're going to see the big golf tournament at Doral. I'm speaking tonight for a charity.
There's nothing that shows you really understand how American people are feeling than going to a golf tournament in the midst of an economic crisis.
And then we'll be coming back here pretty quickly, but they're having a big event and a lot of charitable causes are involved. So we look forward to that. It's in Miami at Doral.
President Trump, the markets today are way down, the worst day in years because of the tariffs. So how's it going?
I think it's...
The markets are way down because of the tariffs. Now, so on April 2nd, when he made that speech and signed that executive order on tariffs, he did it after the markets are already closed. And so it was the next day that it opened and went, I mean, it would, you know, it was like a Black Tuesday type of thing, right?
Going very well. It was an operation. like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal? They've taken advantage of us for many, many years. For many years, we've been at the wrong side of the ball, and I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be unbelievable. The thing that people have to talk about, we're up almost to $7 trillion of investment coming into our country, and you'll see how it's going to turn out. Our country's going to boom.
Okay, so again, trying to say that there's going to be, they've been saying how there's going to be short-term pain. And the American people didn't sign up for that, right? Let's go to Kramer here.
Breaking news, Vice President J.D. Vance just saying the Trump administration is, quote, feeling good about Trump's tariffs.
We're feeling good. Look, I frankly thought in some ways it could be worse in the markets because this is a big transition. You saw the president said earlier today, it's like a patient who was very sick. We did the operation, and now it's time to make the patient better. And that's exactly what we're doing.
All right, this has Jim Cramer from CNBC's Mad Money, who has never been a free trader, right? So he's not just out here to go against them. He's saying the White House doesn't seem to understand what it's trying to do and that the reciprocal tariffs are not reciprocal and could do tremendous damage. So out front now, Jim Cramer of CNBC's Mad Money and Squawk on the Street, all on CNBC, that incredible network that I will love to the day I die.
Just so great to be here with you, Erin.
So, and I'm so thrilled that we're able to talk. Okay, so what the heck is going on?
Well, I'm let down because I'm not a free trader. I'm a fair trader, always have been from the days when you worked with me at CNBC.
Yep.
And what I was hoping was that a coordinated thing where if you are charging us 20%, we charge you 20%. Instead of a car where we're only making you pay 2.5 and you're not letting us in, we try to get things better. But instead
on a specific thing, you go, if they're 10 on a car, you go 10 on a car.
But I went deep on the numbers today, and the numbers did not make any sense. And I was actually
I was doing like bananas in Vietnam. You did Cramerica.
Well, I just said, it's one of these things where if I'm doing 100 billion and you're letting me do 10 billion and I'm letting you do 100 billion, there was a way to be able to make it work. But the numbers that they did, and they had this ridiculous. I mean, that was the chart that they had with the mathematical equation. I mean, are you kidding me? How about just like
it looked like an Einstein.
I know. How about the fact that it was just wrong? Yeah. And what bothered me, Aaron, was that they really did over and over again. The president said, "Listen, it's going to be reciprocal. So you do it, we do it, and that was going to be so good." And I really believed in it. And I feel like a sucker tonight. Because I am not a free trader, and I do not believe in free trade. And I was just as tough, if not tougher, than his people, but they screwed it up, and they did it a totally...
Okay, so what he's trying to do here, this guy's always wrong about shit, right? And people talk about things that they know can't happen. He would do things, he would pump stocks up for pump and dump and then have to apologize. I mean, he did all kinds of despicable things. Jon Stewart embarrassed him on his show by showing him some of the things that he said that were, where he had a conflict of interest in all these things, right? And so he was for these tariffs, but he probably knew all along the tariffs weren't going to be good for Wall Street and certainly not for Main Street. He knew this because everyone knows it. Every economist knows these things. And so he was for tariffs, but he was for the idea of doing them so we could talk about them, but not in terms of what Trump is doing, which is actually doing them, right? Because no one in their right mind would do those things because of the effects on the economy.
Ill-advised way. And I was very let down as someone who really, truly believes that free trade is awful for the American working person. This is what they came up with. Geez, come on, have some gumption, have some math.
I mean,
have some math. All right, so again, this guy's he's always been a failure at this stuff, but he's made money. So the things that he said has always, benefited him because he wants you to do something that's going to benefit him, but it's not going to benefit you, right? When they do some sort of pump and dump or any of these things that he's pushed on people, and irresponsibly so. A lot of times these guys they have a conflict of interest, like I said. But the thing is that, if you want something to be successful let's put it this way. To understand tariffs, you would have to understand who it benefits, right? So if Trump could actually bring back manufacturing, so what he's saying is that manufacturing that happens over in China, well, or some other country, will now be back in America with American workers. But American workers are going to charge more money, and everything's going to be more expensive in America. And so the products are going to be more expensive. So who does that benefit, right? And these things, these imports create supply issues that, that takes away from demand, and so prices go down. And so tariffs do not benefit you at the grocery line or you're the average consumer. They hurt the average consumer. That's what everybody knows about tariffs. I'm no economic expert. If you add more money to something, if you take an imported product and you charge more money on it, then that means the American companies can charge more money on their products. So it just drives prices up across the board, right? Like everybody knows it. It's going to happen. So this had nothing to do with benefiting you immediately. Now, if Trump asked the American people, hey, we're going to do this long-term economic plan that's going to benefit the economy long-term, but you're going to suffer for a while. American people would say, fuck you, we don't want to do that, right? Find some other way to drive prices down. And so there's no other way to drive prices down, right? There's no way to drive prices down because they're doing everything they can to keep inflation to a minimum, but inflation should be worse. And so they don't have a plan for you or, reality which you're going to pay less. The dollar is just worth less now. And so you either have to get paid more money, and you're not going to get that because companies are feeling the impact as well. Everybody's suffering, and tariffs are just going to make that fucking worse, right? Like everybody fucking knows this. And so the only thing it could do is benefit people in a short-term basis that make money building these factories or whatever in America. But, again, this is a short-lived situation because as soon as Trump's done, they're going to repeal these tariffs, but it's going to be too late. So Trump is all he could do is make the problem worse. He couldn't solve the problem. And people would have came whining to him in 3 months saying, hey, you haven't reduced the prices. But now they're going to flip the fuck out because everything's going to get blamed on tariffs. Like if Trump didn't do anything, he could say, well, I couldn't fix what Biden did. But now it's on Trump. He's put it on himself, which is just stupid. And so this whole thing is like an absolute debacle. And every Trumper should kind of know that he fucked you by now. And as prices go up, it's no temporary thing. He's no genius. We showed that over and over again. He's no wonderkind. He's no brilliant guy. And so he just got this fucking bug up his ass about tariffs, or he was ordered to do tariffs by his handlers. Whatever the reason, it's going to fuck the American people over. And then we're going to see what happens, right? When the American people are outraged by tariffs, when the rubber beats the road, and if that happens, where people get outraged because people are so pacified, we'll see what happens. But Trump's not going to respond because he has no response, because he can't solve the problems that he promised you he was going to solve. And so he could just say that these tariffs are something that are going to kick him down the road, and hopefully he can ride that out for a bit for himself. But other than that, there's just, that's just bullshit, right? That's not real. I mean, that's not going to affect you in some way. But anyways, let's move on to the next thing here. Okay, so I had more to present here, but I'm going to just pass that on till tomorrow. There's already a long video. The same theme is going to exist tomorrow because this is an ongoing thing right now. And so what's happened here is it's a very specific thing. And so there's these two elements that are being sold to the American people. There's the traditional politicians, which would be the Joe Biden and the Kamala Harris's and the Democratic Party. And then there's the outsiders represented by Trump. Trump is the ultimate outsider, even though he was connected with these people just in business. Like he was just on the other side of the same power structure in business and celebrity culture. He was friends with all these people, hobnobbed with them, paid money to politicians, bought politicians, these things, right? And so he's not really an outsider, but that's what he is. This is kind of what people think about him because he wasn't a lifelong politician. And so there's also two dueling visions with the Democrats and the Republicans. So Trump had what looked like a pretty good economy, even though it wasn't, because it was based in deregulation, which you deregulated the banks and Wall Street, which is always going to give you a short-term bump. But then they're going to do stupid shit, and they're going to loot too much money, and they're going to fuck up the whole debt to income ratio. I mean, all these things, right? The banks have this thing used to be called a fractional reserve, where they had to have a certain amount of the money that they were loaning out. It used to be 1 to 12, so they have $1 for every $12 they loan out, which is completely fucked anyway. But then they got rid of that, and that's partially what caused the derivatives markets and all these other things, the subprime mortgages to collapse, all that bullshit that went down in 2008. And Trump deregulated all these things, which meant he'd have a good economy for a short term. But it's like with everything else with Trump, there's no depth to it, right? It's all for show. It's all a scam. It's all it's all grifting. And so, going into the 2020 summer, which caused the whole where the COVID thing happened and they shut down the economy, they blamed everything on Trump, and the American people believed it or not. The election was either legitimate or it wasn't, and Trump lost. And there's all these people that hated on Trump for not following the decorum and the being performative, like acting like a president. The business of acting like a president. I talked about this in depth. That was their number one issue. Not that Trump wasn't handled, because he was. Trump has handlers. It's Wall Street, it's the bank, it's Israel, it's whatever else. These people who have power and influence over him, right? People who owned him before he came into politics. People he'd have to go to money to get what he had done. And so Wall Street, and I meant to make this point earlier in the video, when Trump poo-pooed Wall Street and said it'll bounce back, Trump's barometer for success has always been Wall Street. Whenever he says that economic policies are working, he'd look at the numbers at Wall Street, and Wall Street was something he always answered to. It was like his God. And the tariffs is the first time he's broken away from Wall Street, which is fucked, right? Which means that, there might be people in the financial institutions that are going to benefit from his tariffs, so they're into it, but they're all a little bit worried because of the whole, it's fucked, right? It's just like they can't believe he actually did it. I mean, that's the overall consensus. They can't believe he actually did the tariffs. They thought he was just bullshitting. And he probably was until he needed to do something. And so that speaks, we'll come back to that. So the Biden administration had 4 years to show you what it was when you had a president who played by the rules, a president who followed the rules of engagement. And, he would act presidential. I mean, Joe Biden still didn't act presidential because he's Joe Biden, but he had been a politician for a number of years. And he knew how to act. He knew what was expected of him. And he had all these handlers and people telling him what to say. And he went along with it much more than Trump did, who would just go off the cuff and tweet in the middle of the night and get into these petty little immature battles, all the shit that Trump did. But after 4 years of Biden, American people are like, you fucked us. Let's go back to Trump, because he's the outsider and he must have a solution, because the American people have this idea, we've all been indoctrinated with this idea that there is a solution out there, because America will always be saved. So if America's in crisis, then there's some sort of, this is the idea of pockets of the future. If the civilization is going to collapse, this idea came to me when I came up with this name, Pockets of the Future, that if a civilization is going to collapse, which has happened many, many times, either in small, regions around the world where an empire collapses, a kingdom collapses, a government, a way of life collapses, or there's some sort of tumultuous event like an ice age or something that threatens the life of the people, right? Some kind of natural disaster, comets hit the earth. There's been these things over and over again, floods, the polar ice caps melt. There's land masses now underwater that exist during the ice age. And, those people, they built cities on now, they're underwater. The underwater cities are because of that, right? The great floods. And so when something like that happens, there must be some people that survive it, because there are still people here, right? There has to be some people who survive the collapse. Massive reduction of population. And those people have to start preparing for it before it happens, because they can't be just, winging it, right? They have to, they have to have some sort of intuition, or they can read the tea leaves and see what's going to happen. And those people are what I call pockets of the future. They're beginning to prepare for the, transitionary period and to live on the other side of the collapse. And each one of us that is aware of this has some sort of responsibility to create some sort of pockets of the future by just going in the right direction, even if you don't survive it, because, other people pick up on it, and humanity, it just needs to happen. Like, it just has to happen, right? But for the majority of the people, there's, and all of us have this in us, we believe America will always be here. Like, some part of us just thinks that, because it's just what it is. America's, kind of a stable system from our point of view. I mean, it isn't a stable system, but from what we've experienced, right? And so for all of us, we're like, well, there's got to be a way, right? There's going to be a way. There's got to be a way, right? I mean, there's got to be a way, right? And so if it isn't the Republicans, it's got to be the Democrats, or there has to be something else. And so we go back and forth thinking that one of these two bozos and parties has a solution, because we can't imagine a situation where neither one of them does, right? And so Joe Biden had 4 years, and people said, all right, let's go back to Trump. We didn't really, get a full dose of Trump, and they were thwarting him the whole time. And so, that's why people voted for Trump this time. Kamala Harris was a disaster. She was a patsy. And now everyone should know that Trump's just a fucking bobblehead. Like, he's a complete moron, because I think he just talked himself into doing these tariffs, and he's, he doesn't have any explanation of how they can work, because, people know what tariffs would do. It's going to drive up prices, not just here, but globally. And that's not what any fucking person wants right now. So, that's the simplistic understanding of it, but it's not a solution. And so if tariffs is the best thing he's got nothing. And the other things he's doing are fucked. Changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. I mean, these are just, performative things. He's not going to annex Greenland. He's not going to do these things. Like, he's just, he's a bumbling idiot. And so we can't go back to the Democrats. We already know what they have, and they don't have anything, right? They don't have anybody who can solve any of these problems. I mean, they can get rid of the damage that Trump did by reversing Trump policies, and then they'll continue doing the damage that Biden was doing. So neither one has any solution. And as I've said before, like, this is a crisis. You're defined by your enemies, right? And so there's always a counter movement. And so the counter movement isn't political. They're all part of one club. The counter movement is spiritual, right? There's a spiritual renaissance where some people are changing internally. This is the idea of indigo children, these people who are undergoing spiritual changes and evolving without them really knowing about it and everyone else knowing about it, but there's an evolution of consciousness. And that's the only chance of, if there's like a dark force and a light force, or there's evolution and de-evolution, and there's whatever these different battles are, that's the good side. That's what I've been saying in my videos for years now. That's, people say you're black-pilled. No. I'm like, this is the ending of our civilization is a good thing, because it opens up the possibility to evolve, because we have higher levels of consciousness that we can reach. We just refuse to do so. People just don't want to do it, whatever reason. Like, we always look towards the lower part, and we're always engaged in our lower tendencies. It sucks, but that's reality. But something that has to change, right? Like that, even if it's, like, in a sense forced upon us, like based on our very survival, like that's what's going to happen. But I've known about this for years. That's the real battle. And it's not really a battle at all. What you're going to have is the current civilization imploding, and then people saying, well, we got to do something different. What is there? And it'll come from internally, this movement. And the people who embrace it will survive, and the people that don't won't. And there'll be reduced population, and then people will have to embrace their higher nature. And you have to have a civilization of saints, and then all these problems disappear. And it's not like there was any sort of war waged. It's like one group of sociopaths and people who follow them extinct themselves, and everybody else says, all right, good, see ya. Like the people who are left here, and they do something better, right? That's the only chance. That's the only chance for pockets of the future. That's the only chance for humanity. We have to be better than we are. We have to go to a higher level, and we have to connect to divinity in a way that we're not just doing the shit that we want to do all the time, regardless how self-destructive, how wrong it is. And so that's either going to happen or it's not, but the possibility is there. But the possibility for salvation isn't the Democrats or the Republicans. So everyone's kind of getting a whiff of that right now, right? They're all kind of smelling it. They're all kind of feeling it. Well, like even the Democrats were like, "Oh my God, Trump can't do it, and we know we can't do it." Like we know we are, like we don't have any ideas, and so then they're not even acknowledging how bad it is, right? So it's on multi levels, and this is what you see happening. They're all getting slapped in the face by reality that it's over, and they don't even they can't do anything about it. All right, so I'll be covering this for a while because you can see they're like panicking and they're throwing shit up on the wall the same way Trump is. Like it's just a desperate act, but you're trying to make sense. But no one has any solutions because there is no solution. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the apocalypse. And the ascension, I would have a blessed day and be grateful.